The space station, called Nexus, was the largest structure ever built by the Galactic Council. It floated in the darkness between stars like a metal flower with 1,000 petals. Today, ships from 47 different species had gathered around it. Their lights blinked in the darkness like fireflies. Everyone had come to see the same thing. Captain Admiral Vex Thalion stood at the center of the main observation deck. He was tall, even for his species. His scales were deep blue, and they shifted to purple when light touched them. He had 4 eyes, and right now, all 4 were fixed on the massive viewing window in front of him. Behind him stood hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy. There were the Valorians with their silver skin. There were the Cathani priests in their flowing robes. There were insect-like Chitauri clicking their mandibles with excitement. All of them had helped build what waited outside that window. 300 years. That was how long it had taken. 300 years of planning, arguing, building, and waiting. Vex Thalion had given most of his life to this project. He had watched his scales fade from bright blue to their current darker shade. He had seen empires rise and fall while the work continued. But now it was done. "Begin the unveiling," Vex Thalion commanded. The lights around Nexus Station dimmed. Spotlights activated in the darkness of space. They pointed at something huge, something that had been hidden behind energy shields. The shields dropped. Gasps filled the observation deck. Some representatives fell to their knees. Others made religious signs with their hands or claws or tentacles. A few simply stood with their mouths open, unable to speak. The Eternal Dominion was beautiful beyond words. The ship stretched 12 kilometers from front to back. Its hull was made of crystalline Valorian alloy that caught the spotlights and threw rainbows across the darkness. Great towers rose from its surface like the spires of ancient temples. Weapon arrays lined its sides in perfect symmetry. The Council's symbol glowed on its bow in letters 50 meters tall. It was not just a ship. It was a statement. It was a message to every species in the galaxy, but especially to one species in particular, the humans. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 200 years ago. They were young and small. Their territory was tiny compared to the great empires. Their technology was basic. Their ships were ugly and utilitarian. But somehow, impossibly, the humans had refused to bow. They traded as equals. They spoke as equals. They acted like they belonged at the same table as species that had traveled the stars for 10,000 years. The Eternal Dominion would remind them of their place. "The most powerful vessel ever constructed by sentient life," Vex Thalion announced to the gathered representatives. "Its shields can withstand a supernova. Its weapons can crack planets. Its engines can cross the galaxy in weeks. Nothing in the universe can stand against it." Applause filled the observation deck. Vex Thalion allowed himself a small smile. Then the doors opened, and the human representative walked in. She was alone. This was typical for humans. They never brought large groups to diplomatic events. Vex Thalion had never understood why. The human was a female of average height, with black hair cut short. Her skin was light brown, and her eyes were dark and sharp. She wore a leather jacket over a simple uniform. The jacket looked old and worn. It was almost offensive to see such casual clothing among the ceremonial robes of the other representatives. Her name was Captain Sarah Chen, and she commanded Earth's diplomatic fleet. The other representatives stepped aside as she walked forward. She moved with confidence, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She stopped at the viewing window and looked out at the Eternal Dominion. Vex Thalion watched her carefully. He wanted to see her face when she understood what the Council had built. He wanted to see fear or awe, or at least respect. Chen studied the ship in silence for a long moment. Her eyes moved across its length, taking in every detail. Then something strange happened. Her lips twitched. The corners of her mouth turned up slightly. Her shoulders began to shake. And then Captain Sarah Chen laughed. It was not a polite laugh or a nervous laugh. It was a real laugh, loud and genuine. It echoed across the silent observation deck like thunder. Every representative in the room turned to stare at her. The Valorians looked confused. The Cathani priests looked angry. The Chitauri clicked their mandibles in alarm. Vex Thalion felt his scales flush purple. This was the color his species turned when they felt strong emotion. "Is something amusing, Captain?" he asked. His voice was cold and sharp. Chen wiped tears from her eyes. She was still smiling. "I am sorry," she said. "I truly am. Please forgive me. It is just." She looked back at the massive ship. "You built a cathedral." "Excuse me?" "A cathedral," Chen repeated. "A beautiful, ceremonial, 12-kilometer cathedral. It is stunning. Really, the craftsmanship is amazing." She paused to catch her breath. "But does it even have point defense systems?" Silence filled the observation deck. No one moved. "Point defense systems?" Vex Thalion repeated. He did not understand the question. "Small weapons," Chen explained. "Fast-firing guns to shoot down missiles and fighters. The little threats that slip past the big shields." She tilted her head. "I do not see any on your ship. The hull is too smooth, too clean. You designed it to look impressive, not to fight. The Eternal Dominion's shields are impenetrable," Vex Thalion said. "No missile could ever reach its hull. Every shield has a weakness, Captain Admiral. Every single one." Chen pulled out a small tablet from her jacket. She tapped it, and a hologram of the Eternal Dominion appeared in the air. One primary reactor, no backup. One central computer core, no redundancy. And your shield generators. She tapped again, highlighting several points on the hologram. They have to cycle every 47 minutes. The gap is only 3 seconds, but it is there. Vex Thalion felt his heart stop. The cycling window was classified at the highest level. Only 7 people in the entire council knew about it. "How do you know about that?" he whispered. Chen shrugged. "Because that is physics. We learned that lesson 200 years ago." She put the tablet away and looked at him with those sharp, dark eyes. "You built this ship to intimidate humanity. But you built it the way a committee builds things. It is impressive on paper." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. In a real fight, it would be a disaster. The observation deck erupted in angry voices. The angry voices grew louder. Representatives from dozens of species shouted and argued. Some demanded that Chen be arrested. Others called for war against Earth. The Chitauri clicked so loudly that their sounds became a constant buzz. Captain Admiral Vex Thalion raised his hand. Slowly, the room became quiet. His 4 eyes never left Captain Sarah Chen's face. "You insult 300 years of work," he said. His voice was calm, but his scales pulsed purple, with barely controlled rage. "You insult the combined effort of 47 species. You insult me." Chen met his gaze without flinching. "I state facts, Captain Admiral. Facts are not insults. You claim our greatest achievement is worthless. I claim it is flawed." Chen crossed her arms over her chest. "There is a difference. The Eternal Dominion is an incredible piece of engineering. The craftsmanship is beautiful. The technology is advanced. I am sure it took great skill and dedication to build." "Then why did you laugh?" Vex Thalion demanded. "Because you built it to fight humanity, but you have never fought a real war." Chen's voice was steady and serious now. All traces of laughter were gone. "None of you have. Not in thousands of years." A Valorian representative stepped forward. His silver skin gleamed under the lights. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years. We have ended countless conflicts. You have bullied smaller species into submission," Chen corrected. "That is not the same thing. When was the last time a council fleet faced an enemy that could actually win?" No one answered. "Humanity has only been in space for 400 years, Chen continued. In that time, we have fought 6 major wars against ourselves. We have faced extinction 3 times. We have rebuilt our civilization from ashes twice. She pointed at the eternal dominion through the window. Every flaw I see in that ship is a lesson we learned the hard way. Every weakness is a mistake we already made and paid for in blood. Vex Thalion's claws scraped against the railing beside him. The metal groaned under his grip. You think human ships are better? I think human ships are built by people who know what it means to lose. The words hung in the air like poison. Several representatives made sounds of shock. To suggest that the mighty Galactic Council could lose to anyone, especially the tiny human civilization, was unthinkable. Vex Thalion stepped closer to Chen. He was much taller than her. His shadow fell across her face. Most species would have stepped back, or looked away. Chen did neither. She looked up at him with those steady, dark eyes. You know nothing of war, Vex Thalion said quietly. You are children playing with dangerous toys. Maybe, Chen replied. But children learn fast when their survival depends on it. Then let us see what you have learned. Vex Thalion turned to address the entire observation deck. I propose a demonstration. The eternal dominion. Against whatever vessel humanity chooses to send. No tricks, no politics, just a simple test of which philosophy builds better ships. The representatives began to murmur. Some looked excited. Others looked worried. A military demonstration between the Council and humanity could easily become a war. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Earth accepts. Name the coordinates. You do not need to consult your government? I speak for Earth in matters of defense. That is my authority. Chen smiled slightly. Besides, we have been waiting for this invitation for a long time. Vex Thalion blinked. All four eyes blinked at slightly different times, a sign of confusion in his species. You expected this? Captain Admiral, you spent 300 years building a ship specifically designed to intimidate humanity. You invited us here to witness its unveiling. You wanted us to be afraid. Chen shook her head. Did you really think we were not paying attention? Did you think we were not preparing? Chen. The observation deck fell silent again. For the first time, some of the representatives looked uncertain. They had always seen humans as primitives, who somehow stumbled into space travel. The idea that humanity had been watching and preparing was unsettling. 1 month, Vex Thalion said. We will meet in neutral space. Sector 774. Bring your best ship. We will bring an appropriate ship, Chen said. There was something in her voice that Vex Thalion did not like. It sounded almost like pity. She turned to leave. The representatives parted for her, like water around a stone. Captain Chen, Vex Thalion called out. She stopped and looked back over her shoulder. When this demonstration is over, humanity will finally understand its place in this galaxy. Chen smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and knowing. Captain Admiral, I hope this demonstration helps someone understand something. I truly do. She paused at the door, but I do not think it will be humanity learning the lesson. Then she was gone. The next month was chaos throughout the galaxy. News of the challenge spread within hours. Every species with access to communications talked about nothing else. Betting markets opened on dozens of worlds. Most bets favored the Eternal Dominion by enormous margins. On Earth, the reaction was different. There was no panic. There was no fear. Humans went about their daily lives as if nothing important was happening. This confused the galactic observers who watched Earth for any sign of preparation. Where were the emergency meetings? Where were the military mobilizations? Where were the speeches about the coming threat? There were none. Instead, deep in a military shipyard on Luna, Earth's moon, engineers worked quietly on a ship that had not flown in 30 years. They replaced worn parts. They updated old systems. They loaded weapons that had been in storage for decades. The ship was called the Perseverance. It was a Mongoose-class destroyer, barely 200 meters long. Its hull was covered in scorch marks and patches where repairs had been made over the years. It was not beautiful. It was not impressive. but it had survived 6 major engagements without ever being destroyed. It had been rebuilt after battles that should have killed it. Every scar on its surface was a story of survival. Captain Sarah Chen watched the final preparations from an observation window. "Are you sure about this?" asked her aide, a young officer named James. "No," Chen admitted. "But I am sure about that ship. My grandmother commanded it during the Saturn Rebellion. My mother flew it during the Belt War. It has been waiting for another fight for 30 years. Against the largest warship in galactic history? Chen turned to look at him. "James, let me tell you something about humans. We do not win because we are the strongest or the biggest. We win because we refuse to stay down. We get knocked down and we get back up. We lose battles and we learn from them. We build our ships to survive, not to impress." She looked back at the Perseverance. That ship out there represents everything humanity has learned about war. Every mistake we made, every lesson we learned, every friend we lost. It is ugly, and old, and small. She smiled. And it is going to teach the Galactic Council something they have forgotten. "What is that?" Chen's smile widened. "That size does not matter nearly as much as heart." Sector 7-4 was empty space far from any star. There were no planets here. There were no stations. There was only darkness and cold and the distant light of faraway suns. The Galactic Council chose this place for a reason. They wanted no distractions. They wanted a clean stage where the whole galaxy could watch humanity learn its place. 300 observer ships arrived first. They formed a massive sphere around the demonstration area. Each ship carried cameras and sensors that would broadcast the event to billions of viewers across thousands of worlds. This would be the most watched moment in galactic history. Then the Eternal Dominion arrived. The massive ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue light. It drifted into the center of the observation sphere like a mountain moving through clouds. Its lights activated one by one, illuminating its crystalline hull. Its weapon arrays began their power-up sequences. Its shields shimmered into existence, like soap bubbles made of light. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Captain Admiral Vex Thalion stood at the command platform. Around him, 12,000 crew members worked at their stations. They represented the finest officers from every council species. Each one had trained for years, just for the chance to serve on this vessel. "All systems at full power," reported his tactical officer, a Valorian named Silvera. "Weapons charged. Shields at maximum strength." "We are ready, Captain Admiral." Vex Thalion nodded. "And the human ship?" "Not yet arrived. We are receiving a signal from the edge of the sector. They are requesting permission to approach." "How polite of them." Vex Thalion allowed himself a small smile. "Grant permission. Let them see what they face." "One permission." Vex Thalion. "One permission." The communication channel crackled to life. Captain Sarah Chen's voice filled the bridge. "Eternal Dominion. This is the UES Perseverance. We are approaching your position now." "Thank you for the warm welcome, Captain Chen," Vex Thalion replied. "I expected you to bring a larger vessel. Perhaps your fleet's flagship?" "The Perseverance is appropriate for this demonstration," Chen said. There was that strange tone in her voice again. Vex Thalion still could not identify it. "Very well. We will see you soon." The channel closed. A few minutes later, a small flash of light appeared at the edge of the observation sphere. The human ship had arrived. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. "Is that it?" Silvera whispered. The Perseverance was tiny. Against the backdrop of observer ships, it looked like a toy. Its hull was dark, gray, almost black, covered in scorch marks and welded patches. It had no elegant curves or beautiful lines. It was just a brutal wedge of metal, with engines at one end and weapons at the other. Compared to the 12-kilometer majesty of the Eternal Dominion, it looked like a joke. Laughter began to spread across the bridge. Officers from different species pointed at the tiny vessel and made mocking comments. Even Vexthalion felt his tension ease. This was what humanity had sent. This old, ugly, broken-down destroyer? Scan the vessel, he ordered. Silvera worked her console. Mongoose-class destroyer. 203 meters long. Crew complement of 47. Armed with kinetic cannons and missile launchers. Shields rated at. She paused and checked her readings again. Shields rated far below any modern standard. 47 crew members? Another officer laughed out loud. We have 47 crew members in the cafeteria alone. Their weapons are kinetic? A Chitauri officer clicked in disbelief. Vexthalion raised his hand for silence. He studied the human ship carefully. Something felt wrong. Chen had seemed so confident back on Nexus Station. She had spoken as if humanity held a secret advantage. But looking at this vessel, he could not imagine what that advantage might be. Captain Chen, he said over the communication channel, are you certain this is the ship you wish to use? You may select another if you prefer. Chen's voice came back immediately. The Perseverance is ready. Captain Admiral. She has been waiting for this moment for a long time. This ship is ancient. She is experienced. There is a difference. Vexthalion shook his head. Very well. The rules of engagement are simple. We will conduct a standard combat demonstration. Each ship will attempt to disable the other. The demonstration ends when one ship can no longer fight. Understood. And Vexthalion? Yes? We brought the old girl out of retirement for this. Chen's voice was warm now, almost gentle. She was my grandmother's ship. Before that, she belonged to my great-grandmother. 4 generations of my family have commanded the Perseverance. Vexthalion did not understand why she was sharing this information. Is that supposed to impress me? No. I just wanted you to understand that when we fight with everything we have. Our history. Our memories. Our family. A pause. Humans do not surrender easily, Captain Admiral. We never have. The communication channel closed. Across the observation sphere, billions of viewers watched. On council worlds, crowds gathered in public squares to cheer for the eternal dominion. On Earth and the human colonies, people watched in quiet groups. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply watched and waited. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command chair that her grandmother had once occupied. The leather was old and worn. The armrests were scratched from years of nervous fingers. 46 crew members worked around her. They were not the youngest officers in the fleet. They were veterans, each one chosen for their experience in actual combat. Some had gray hair. Some had scars. All of them had that look in their eyes that came from seeing real battle. All stations report ready, said Commander James Park, her first officer. He stood beside her chair, his hands clasped behind his back. Engine status? Chief Martinez says we have full power. She also says to tell you that the old girl is excited. Chen smiled. And weapons? Loaded and ready. Lieutenant Silva has been talking to the targeting computer for the last hour. I think they have an understanding. Good. Chen leaned back in her chair and studied the eternal dominion on her view screen. It was huge, beautiful, and terrifying. Any sane person would be afraid, but Chen was not afraid. She had grown up hearing stories about this ship. Her grandmother had taught her every lesson of combat before she could walk. Her mother had trained her to see weakness in any enemy, and Chen could see so many weaknesses in the eternal dominion. The council thinks this is a demonstration of power, she said quietly. They think they are going to teach us a lesson about our place in the galaxy. Are they wrong? Park asked. No. Chen's eyes were hard and steady. Someone is definitely going to learn a lesson today. She touched a button on her armrest. All hands. This is the captain. We are about to engage the largest warship in galactic history. They have more crew than we have missiles. They have more guns than we have crew. They have every advantage except one. She paused. We are human, and we do not lose. The crew did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply nodded and turned back to their stations. They were professionals. They were survivors. And in a few minutes, they were going to shock the entire galaxy. The signal came at exactly noon. Galactic Standard Time. A simple tone that meant both ships were clear. To engage, Captain Admiral Vex Thalion did not hesitate. All weapons, fire at will. The Eternal Dominion came alive with destruction. Plasma lances shot across the void in lines of burning purple. Graviton torpedoes launched in swarms of dozens at a time. Disintegration beams swept through space in patterns designed to leave no escape. The combined firepower of 47 species roared toward the tiny human ship. It was enough energy to crack a small moon. It was enough force to destroy a fleet. The Perseverance was not there. The human ship moved with sudden, violent speed. Its engines burned bright as it dove below the first wave of fire. Then it rolled hard to the right, slipping between two plasma lances. Then it climbed sharply, spinning as it went, dodging a graviton torpedo by meters. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, officers shouted in confusion. How are they moving like that? Silvera demanded. Their acceleration should be killing their crew. Vex Thalion watched the tiny ship dance through his weapons fire. It was not graceful movement. It was not elegant. It was brutal and desperate, and somehow perfect. The human ship flew like an animal fighting for its life. Recalculate firing solutions, he ordered. Predict their movements. I am trying. Silvera's hands flew across her console. Their movement pattern is random. They are not following any standard evasion protocol. Then, find their protocol. They do not have one. They are just reacting. On the Perseverance, Captain Chen gripped her armrest as the ship twisted through another impossible turn. The artificial gravity was struggling to keep up. Her crew was pressed into their seats by forces that should have been lethal. But the Perseverance was built for this. Its inertial dampeners were military-grade, not civilian comfort models. Its hull was reinforced to handle stresses that would tear other ships apart. It was built to survive fights it should not win. Damage report, Chen called out. No damage, Park replied. They have not touched us yet. Good. Begin attack run Alpha. The Perseverance stopped running. It turned sharply and accelerated directly toward the Eternal Dominion. Vex Thalion saw the human ship coming and felt a moment of satisfaction. They are charging us. How foolish. All weapons. Concentrate fire on their approach vector. Another wave of destruction roared toward the tiny vessel. This time there was nowhere to run. The Perseverance flew straight into the wall of fire. Then it twisted. At the last possible moment, the human ship rolled onto its side and slipped through a gap in the weapon's fire. It passed so close to a plasma lance that its hull glowed red. It came so close to a graviton torpedo that the crew felt the shockwave when it exploded behind them. And then the Perseverance was inside the Eternal Dominion's weapons range. Too close for the big guns to track. Chen smiled. Now, all weapons, fire. The Perseverance's kinetic cannons opened up. They were small weapons compared to the Council's technology. They fired simple metal projectiles at high speed. Nothing elegant, nothing impressive, but they were not aiming at the hull. Lieutenant Silva had spent the entire approach run analyzing the Eternal Dominion's systems. She had found every sensor array, every shield emitter, every weapons capacitor on the massive ship's surface. And now, she was systematically destroying them. Small explosions rippled across the Eternal Dominion's hull. A sensor tower went dark. A shield emitter sparked and died. A weapons array tried to track the tiny attacker and found its targeting systems were gone. We are taking damage, Silvera shouted. They are targeting our external systems. Vex Thalion stared at his view screen in disbelief. The human ship was too small to destroy the Eternal Dominion directly. So instead, it was blinding them. It was paralyzing them. It was taking them apart, piece by piece. "Activate point defense systems," he ordered. "Silence on the bridge." "Captain Admiral," Silvera said quietly. "We do not have point defense systems." Chen's words from the observation deck echoed in Vexthalian's mind. Does it even have point defense systems? He understood now. The Eternal Dominion was designed to fight other capital ships. It was designed for large-scale fleet battles, where enemy vessels were too big to get close. No one had considered the possibility of a small, fast attacker getting inside their weapons range, because no Council species would ever build a ship designed for such desperate tactics. "Ramming speed," Vexthalian commanded. "If we cannot shoot them, we will crush them." The Eternal Dominion's massive engines roared to life. The giant ship began to move, trying to catch the tiny attacker that buzzed around it like an angry insect. But the Perseverance was too fast. Every time the big ship turned, the small ship was already somewhere else. Every time it accelerated, the human vessel easily matched its speed and stayed just out of reach. Meanwhile, the kinetic cannons kept firing. More sensors died. More shield emitters failed. The Eternal Dominion was becoming blind and deaf, a giant, unable to find its tiny opponent. "They are picking us apart," an officer shouted. "We cannot see them. We cannot hit them." Vexthalian stood frozen at the command platform. This was impossible. The Eternal Dominion was the most powerful ship ever built. It should have destroyed the human vessel in the first volley. Instead, he was losing. On the observer ships, billions of viewers watched in stunned silence. The mighty Galactic Council flagship was being humiliated by a ship 1/60th its size. It was not a battle. It was a lesson. "Captain Admiral," Silvera said. Her voice was hollow. "They have destroyed 80% of our external sensors. 60% of our shield emitters are offline. We cannot track them effectively. How long until they destroy us? They are not trying to destroy us. They are just disabling us." Chen's voice came over the communication channel. "Eternal Dominion. This is Perseverance. You have fought well. But this demonstration is almost over. You have one chance to end this peacefully." Vexthalian's claws dug into his command console. "We will never surrender to humans. I am not asking you to surrender. I am asking you to listen." Chen's voice was calm and almost kind. "Your shield cycling window happens in 4 minutes. You know the one I mentioned on Nexus Station. 3 seconds every 47 minutes when your shields drop completely." Cold fear ran through Vexthalian's body. "When that window opens," Chen continued, "I am going to fire a single missile directly at your primary reactor housing. It will be a precision charge, not a destroyer. Your ship will lose power, but it will not explode. You cannot possibly time that shot accurately. Captain Admiral, we have known about that weakness for 200 years. We have been training for this exact scenario since before the Eternal Dominion was finished." A pause. "Your ship was built to intimidate us. We have been preparing to defeat it since the day construction began." The bridge was silent. Every officer stared at their captain, waiting for orders. Vexthalian thought about fighting. He thought about ordering his crew to find some way to stop the humans. But he looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. The Perseverance had positioned itself perfectly. It was aimed directly at the reactor housing. It was waiting for the shield window with its missile already loaded. He had lost. The shield cycling window opened. 3 seconds of vulnerability. The Perseverance fired one missile. The explosion was small and controlled, but it was enough. The Eternal Dominion's primary reactor shut down. Emergency systems kicked in. But the great ship went dark, drifting powerless in the void. The demonstration was over. Humanity had won. The Eternal Dominion drifted in darkness. Emergency lights flickered in its corridors. 12,000 crew members sat at dead consoles, waiting for orders that their captain could not give. 2 hours after the battle ended, A small shuttle detached from the Perseverance. It crossed the empty space between the ships and docked at one of the Eternal Dominion's emergency airlocks. Captain Sarah Chen walked alone through the dark corridors. She passed crew members from dozens of species. Some looked at her with anger. Some looked at her with confusion. A few looked at her with something like respect. She walked for 20 minutes through the massive ship until she reached the bridge. The doors opened manually. Chen stepped through and found Captain Admiral Vex Thalion waiting for her. He stood at his command platform in the dim emergency lighting. His scales had faded to a pale gray, a sign of deep exhaustion in his species. His 4 eyes were fixed on the human woman who had defeated him. They stood in silence for a long moment. "You could have destroyed us," Vex Thalion finally said. His voice was quiet and hollow. "Yes," Chen agreed. "You had the shot. You could have hit the reactor at full power instead of using a precision charge. 12,000 lives. You could have taken them all. Yes. Why did you not?" Chen walked slowly across the dark bridge. She stopped at one of the viewing windows and looked out at the distant stars. "Because that was not the point of this demonstration," she said. "The Council built this ship to frighten humanity, to remind us that we are small and weak and new to the galaxy." She turned to face Vex Thalion. "But fear was never going to work on us. We have been afraid before. We have faced extinction before. We have seen the darkness and walked through it. Then what was the point?" Vex Thalion asked. "Why accept my challenge, if not to prove your superiority, to teach you something you have forgotten?" Chen leaned against the console behind her. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years. You have ended wars. You have built wonders. You have created a civilization that spans half the galaxy. And yet you defeated our greatest achievement with a museum piece, because you built the Eternal Dominion to impress. You built it to show off. You built it by committee, with each species adding their own ideas, their own technology, their own ego." Chen shook her head. "But you never built it to survive." She pulled out her tablet and projected a hologram of the Perseverance. "This ship was built by people who had lost wars. People who had watched friends die because of design flaws. People who learned that a pretty ship is worthless if it cannot take a beating and keep flying." She pointed at the scorch marks on the hologram. "Every scar you see is a lesson we learned. Every patch is a mistake we will never make again." "We had no scars," Vex Thalion said slowly. "We had no lessons. Because you have never really lost. You have never faced an enemy that could hurt you badly enough to force you to learn." Chen put the tablet away. "Until today." Vex Thalion was silent for a long time. He looked at his dead bridge, at his powerless ship, at the woman who had humbled the entire Galactic Council. "The Council will not accept this defeat," he said. "They will want revenge. They will want to prove that today was a mistake. Maybe. Or maybe they will see what I am offering." "What are you offering?" Chen smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "Partnership. True partnership. Not the kind where you look down at us as primitive newcomers. Not the kind where we pretend to respect traditions we find foolish. Real partnership between equals." "Equals?" Vex Thalion's scales flickered with emotion. "Humanity has been in space for 400 years. We have been traveling the stars for 10,000. And yet we beat your greatest ship with our oldest one." Chen stepped closer to him. "Time does not equal wisdom, Captain Admiral. Experience does. Humanity has packed more combat experience into 400 years than the Council has gained in 10,000. Not because we are better, but because we had to be. We had no choice but to fight and learn and grow." She extended her hand. It was that strange human gesture again. The same one she had offered on Nexus Station. "The Perseverance can tow the Eternal Dominion to the nearest station. We can repair your ship and send you home. And then, we can start a real conversation about how to work together." Vex Thalion looked at her hand. "You want to teach us how to build better ships?" I want us to teach each other. Humanity has survival instincts that the Council has forgotten. But the Council has knowledge and resources that humanity needs. Together, we could build something neither of us could build alone. The other Council members will not agree easily. Then, convince them. You are Captain Admiral. You command the respect of every species in the Council. Chen's eyes were steady and serious. I beat you today because you underestimated humanity. Do not make the same mistake twice. Use what you learned here. Help your people understand that we are not enemies to be feared or children to be dismissed. We are allies waiting to happen. Vex Thalion studied the human woman for a long moment. She was small, by any galactic standard. Her species was young and inexperienced in many ways. But standing in the ruins of his greatest achievement, he could not deny what she had proven. Humans were survivors. They were fighters. They were exactly the kind of allies the Council needed. He took her hand. This will not be easy, he warned. Many in the Council will resist. Nothing worth doing is ever easy. Chen shook his hand firmly. But that is another thing humanity learned a long time ago. Chen. Behind them, emergency power began to flicker back on. The Perseverance's engineers had started repair work on the Eternal Dominion. Human and Council crew members began working side by side in the dark corridors. It was a small beginning. There would be arguments and resistance and doubt in the days to come. The Council would struggle to accept what had happened. Some species would call for war against humanity. Others would demand that the demonstration be declared invalid. But the images would spread across the galaxy. Billions had watched a tiny human ship defeat the mightiest vessel ever built. They had seen human ingenuity triumph over galactic tradition. They had learned that strength was not about size or power or age. Strength was about survival. Strength was about learning. Strength was about getting knocked down and getting back up again. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and watched the stars through the viewing window. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, her people. They had sent her to deliver a message to the galaxy. The message was received. What happens now? Vex Thalion asked, standing beside her. Chen smiled. Now we get to work. The galaxy has a lot of ships that need redesigning. And humans have a lot of lessons to share. And what do we teach you in return? Patience, probably. Chen laughed softly. That was never our strong point. Vex Thalion made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was rusty, like an ability long forgotten. Outside the window, the Perseverance held steady position. Its scarred hull reflected the distant starlight. It was old and ugly and small, and it had just changed the course of galactic history. Not because it was the strongest, not because it was the biggest, but because it was built by people who refused to give up. That was humanity's secret. That was the lesson the galaxy had finally learned. Humans do not surrender. Humans do not quit. Humans get knocked down, and they get back up, every single time. And now the galaxy knew it too.